Hi, everybody. I want to describe to you the lifetime speech activity. You are going to complete a 4 to 6 minute video speech. The speech will articulate your interpretation of several of the learning outcomes of our class, and I want to explain the three of them to you. The first is to reflect on your personal gifts of leadership, what it is that you believe are your talents, your skills in leadership. The second is to humbly critique leaders' skill sets with the leadership theory and the class observations as the basis for your critique. And third, to practice communicating your emerging and evolving perspective and philosophy on leadership. So how do you do that? Well, I would really like for your talk to be creative in nature. I would like you to be reflective in the way in which you approach this work. Examples could be you are giving a retirement speech, or you're giving a toast to an exceptional leader. Maybe you are serving as the president of an emerging entrepreneurial venture, or you are giving us the top 10 practices of effective leadership. But again, please allow creativity to be your guide. You'll be graded equally on the following criteria. Implicitly or explicitly articulating your understanding of leadership theory, integrating at least one concept about leadership from one of our guest presenters, demonstrating that your understanding of leadership is evolving or deepening, delivering it clearly, offering a compelling message, and then again, as I said, creativity in your presentation is just as important. So with all that said, I imagine it still feels a little bit obtuse or opaque, so what I want to do is give you an example. And the example is actually something that I wrote a long time ago for a class similar to this when I myself was a student. And it's a speech. It's, I guess you could sort of call it a speech upon retirement. I entitle it Finding Orion. It's only about a 4-minute speech, but I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. And as I'm reading through it, try to tick off the different things that I talked about as criteria for grading. Things like implicitly or explicitly talking about leadership theory, humbly critiquing that which you learned, best practices in leadership, etc. So here we go. Good evening. Thank you for convening at such short notice. I can imagine you must be a bit anxious having been called to a meeting by the CEO. Now, I assure you that my message will be short and I hope with some lasting purpose. I am stepping down as CEO. I have been fighting a losing battle in search of purpose for some 35 years. I will begin my retirement tomorrow in order to begin a new chapter in my life, a chapter of renewal. I have neglected the opportunity to get to know all of you, to learn from you, to learn what drives you, what excites you, what concerns you, what you'd like to do more of with your life. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in a suburb just outside of Detroit, Michigan. I have a younger brother. My mother stayed at home to raise me and my brother, and my father stayed at work to make sure enough money made its way to the kitchen table. He was a kind and gentle man, and yet he was always unsure about how to communicate that emotion. He never made it to baseball and soccer games, and he was not able to slip away to see me achieve my 4th grade spelling bee victory. My father passed away soon after he retired. It was at his funeral that I was convinced of his deep love for me as a work colleague eulogized my dad. At an early age, I was determined to find balance in a productive career and loving relationships. I was sent off to college with heavy expectation to succeed. In college, I was paired with a roommate who was very different than me. He was an art major from the Northeast. He didn't seem to take class too seriously, and he took every opportunity to experience life outside of the classroom. He made it a point to act childish on occasion as if it was some sort of personal value. And most nights he would leave our room around the time I was getting ready for bed. Sometimes he'd be gone for just a few minutes, and other times I fell asleep before he returned. One cold night in January, I asked him, "Where is it that you go?" He replied that every night he goes outside to soak up the fresh air, and he looks to the sky to find the constellation Orion, the hunter. He told me that sometimes it takes a while to make it out, sometimes he's unsuccessful, and some nights it glimmers bright as though he can reach up and touch it. Whether he finds it, he tells me, is not really the point. It's about seeing new things each time he looks to the sky. He told me that no matter where he is and no matter what the challenge is, he searches for Orion as a way to recenter himself. Daily problems can seem so large until you go outside and realize how very small we are. We are here for a brief time, and no matter how much we agonize over problems, the vast universe will inspire us and keep us in balance. All we have to do is listen. I listened to my roommate, but I was not comfortable experimenting with this nightly routine. At that time in my life, I could not imagine looking for something that was so opaque. I dismissed his routine as childish, and even so, my roommate never felt the need to impose his story or defend his interpretation of the world. Instead, he was comfortable with the path that he was on, welcoming others along the way, but confident enough to walk alone. I didn't stay in contact with my freshman roommate. We exchanged cards sporadically for about a decade after graduation. I know he married his college sweetheart and settled in the country on several acres of land. He had 3 children and once remarked in a card at how clear Orion is in the country, and I knew exactly what he meant. So it's time for me to go back to college. I have to find the right path for me, the path that leads me to meaning and purpose. I'm going to seek out my Orion, and I hope you'll do the same. Thank you. So that, I hope, is an example to you of the way in which I could somewhat creatively articulate some of the lessons learned in class and through our readings, in discussion with experts who we bring to class. And it is a way for me to show you how I am attempting to analyze the work in a more substantial way. If you watch this back and you make sure that you can see where I did well with accomplishing the points and maybe where I struggled. It's not perfect, but it's a good example, I hope, for you as you begin to think about what will be your lifetime speech. Good luck.